So thank you very much for having me here. It's exciting to speak here. I had the opportunity to work actually in the world for Bertelsmann. I was in Asia. I worked always with diverse teams. And then in Korea, in Boston, Massachusetts, where I was head of Lycos. And when I came to America, actually, my HR person took me aside and said, in America, you cannot speak about women, you cannot speak about politics, and you cannot speak about religion. I said, okay, that's great. What should I speak about? Well, best thing would be sports and food. So I didn't keep to that because I feel that we have a lot to do in this world, and we heard a lot about change, what we need to change in this world today. And my question was always, what does change really make it happen? In Google, when I was working there, Google started as a company who said, we make every information in this world available to everybody. And the thought was at that time that if people have information, they can change. So if people become to know the gaps in our society, as we heard, they have the opportunity to change. But still what we see, it's not happening. You know, the person Trump, he said in his election campaign, I could kill a person in Times Street, and it doesn't matter, the people would elect me anyway. And we saw that there is such a contradictional thing. I was recently in India 2 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, at a place where Gandhi was living. I was invited to a Gandhi workshop there, and my question was, at that time when he was there, he didn't have a mobile phone, he didn't have the internet, he didn't have access to a lot of information, but this man still had an influence of the whole world. So the question is, where does change really happen? And that is what I would like to talk about. But jump back to where we are right now. You have heard about the VUCA world, and I go into this divides. I feel that we have right now 3 major divides. You know, one is the ecological divide, so we are no longer connected to our nature. We know that. We are consuming 1.5 worlds in a year, which is about, you know, if you break it down to countries, in America, 4.5 worlds, Germany, about 2.5, you know, we are consuming more resources than the world is able to regenerate. That's what it means. We know that, but we still do it. We have a social divide, which means between self and others. We saw that in the refugee crisis. We saw the refugee crisis as a problem to be solved, and not like, what causes this event? What made it happen? And what have I to do with it? And how can I change it from that perspective? You know, currently, Oxfam, I think 6 months ago, came out with a report in saying that 8 people in this world have more wealth than the bottom 50% of our world population. So 8 versus 3.5 billion people. That is not sustainable. And that creates an anger and a tension in a society on an energetic level, which we then see in the streets, in radicalization. We see that in politics. We see that in our societies everywhere, across countries. We also have a spiritual divide. So the divide between self and self. And I don't have my mobile phone with me, but I think probably, who has no mobile phone in this room? One person. You know, we started to give our soul and our consciousness to the mobile phone. We are no longer connected to ourselves. And when I was talking in the Singularity University, I was with Google, we often brought CEOs. I was responsible for Benelux and Scandinavia. So we brought CEOs to the Singularity University who believes that in 5 to 10 years, everybody will have a chip in his or her brain. This chip will be connected to all information. It will be governed by artificial intelligence, and then we won't have any of these problems anymore in this world, because then we only make rational decisions. So that, I feel, is where we are right now. That is a crossroad. We are laughing at it, but Google is putting a lot of money into making this happen. It's called transhuman. I feel that we have the chance, and that's why I'm an optimist as well, and I feel we can change in every moment of our life. We can change the situation if we believe that we are not a victim, but we are creator of our world. How to do this? So how to change it is, first of all, we need to understand that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created it, which means we don't need to download what we know in the past, put it in the future, and say, okay, we have experience there, so this is how we have to do it in the future. That is no development. So you're stuck into old behavior. And that is actually on an individual level. It's neurologically. Actually, you are trained, and your neurons are firing in this direction when you're going every morning up, drinking a cup of coffee, same cup of coffee, same moment you're waking up, same shower, same cup of coffee, going into the same car, driving the same way to your work, doing the same work, driving back home, doing the same thing. Which means you are neurologically actually stick to these situations. And if you then have to pass by because there is a blockage in your road, you feel insecure. And a lot of people try to avoid that. It's not only a metaphor, a lot of people do this. But I think we have to break that through and understand that we need to do different thinking, different feeling, and approaching the world in a different way. How to do that? Change is happening from within. For me, I felt intuition is a thing which hasn't been trusted in this world for a long time. But intuition is actually not only a gut feeling. Intuition is something which leads you to a higher field and a kind of wisdom. And there is a professor of the Max Planck Institute in Berlin, Gerd Gigerenzer. He is saying that he is consulting about 60% of the CEOs of the DAX-listed companies in Germany. And these folks are saying that 80% of the decision is based on intuition. And then they bring the McKinseys and Boston Consultings in to, support that and bring the numbers so that they can go to the board and say, I'm not made this decision just based on my intuition. I made it because of these numbers. And I think we should trust more our intuition. Because there was one leader from was the CEO of Hannover Leasing Company, a huge company at that time. He said, really change comes from the change for the inner shift which is happening. So you have to understand from which place are you operating, from your inner shift. And I heard today in one of these workshops about bias and about, belief structures and so, yeah, they are there, but I think you can overcome this. When I was coming to this, change was happening in yourself, when I was working with another car company in Munich, on the board level, I spoke to them, I said, look guys, if we're going to stop producing cars from today on, what are you then? Silence in the room. And I said, you are something else than only producing cars, are you? And they said, no, we don't know. I said, that is exactly the problem what we are facing. So you are 150 years operating in this field. You have connections with different countries, with suppliers. You have worked with diverse teams. You have experience in leading an organization. You have experience in processing it. That are the factors. That is the foundation of all what you do. The other thing, a car, is just a car. It's a result of this, which means you have to ask yourself the question, not how can I make a better car? It's more about, what is a car standing for? And it stands for mobility. So if it stands for mobility, how can I create a mobility? And then you might stop making cars. You might thinking about something else. My question to you is, in which society do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a society and pick here and there the cherries and said, oh, I heard in Rwanda they do this. In Norway they do this. And we take that together and then maybe this is a society. No. We should go into our intuition, into our inner field, and understand, connecting with each other, collaborating, feeling, understanding, then taking the data into consideration and saying, this is the world where we want to live in. This is a very busy slide. I put it out, I was asked to put it in again, but what it said is mainly the upper side, you know, the iceberg model. The upper side is more or less where our corporations, also politics, if I might say so, and organizations are working at. So problem statements, structure, processes, expertise, skills, strengths, weaknesses, that is how people make decisions. And say, oh, here are the clear numbers, ticking the boxes, this is the person we can have, or this is the person we don't want to have. But underneath is actually the things which is really, really making the company, the organization, the society tick. It's about the needs, it's about solidarity, motivation, it's about creativity. It's about the recognition of power, influences, so holy cow, sometimes in companies and organizations, it's not the power the power is not with the people who are in that position. There are different people, recognize them, understand what they feel, put yourself in the shoes of somebody else, understand the identity, values, and meanings. When I came to Google, they had a big reorganization, so when I came there, my job was already gone. And I said to my boss, shall I leave? And he said, no, stay in the room. So we were 50 managers in the room. And then these people were on stage. It was a heavy reorganization, which affected a lot of people. And I said, why do you do this? And they said, well, because we want to become a $100 billion company. Quietness in the room. I said, why? That was a quite irritating question to these folks. I said, why not a $200 billion? Why not a $300 billion? Why not a $10 billion? Tell me what you want to do with this money, and then I tell you whether I'm inspired or not and can follow these lines. And that is what we often underestimate. They think making money is the objective in a company way. You know, politicians have different other kind of metaphors how to work, but not understanding the underlying kind of values, the identities, the attitudes, the togetherness, to bring that really into action, into experience, that places are needed to do that. In order to do that, we need to understand that there is no separation between the inside and the outside. So we are creating with our consciousness a reality in every moment. Heisenberg, who was a German physician in 1937 actually, he already understood that the intention of the scientist when he is doing an exercise or when he is doing something with photons is determining the reaction of the photons. Only the intention of it, which means here, and that brings me to this level of, where is change really happening? So which means if we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. If we don't understand who we are, we don't understand how to make change really happening. And the question is, am I doing the things right, or am I doing the right things? I have some friends in the European Commission, and I'm often asking them, folks, what is more important for you? Is it efficiency or is it effectiveness? They said, we have to become more efficient. I said, yeah, we are. So let me tell you one picture. We are in a rowboat, and we are trying to become more efficient, to become more speedy, more quicker. But the boat is steering towards a cliff. Is that the right thing to do? Or shall we have a bird view perspective and thinking about, shall we do a change of course? Shall we go somewhere else? And that is the question, am I doing the right things? So there is a Harvard professor, Robert Keegan. He has developed something based on Piaget. He is a pedagogic education person. He wrote a book, Keegan wrote a book called Immunity to Change. So he also found out that, they had done thousands of studies on people who smoked, and they came to the stage where they had to put a leg from them because of the smoke, and then they told the people, actually, you have to stop smoking in 6 months, otherwise you'll be dead. And guess what? Only 5% of these people stopped smoking. So he said, why is this happening? Why are these folks not changing? They know they're going to die. They have already lost one leg because of this, but they still don't do it. So what is happening here? So he developed a methodology which he applies to organizations and companies, and he goes in and said, okay, he works with people and saying, what is the one big thing you want to have? And in this context here, we could say the one thing could be gender diversity or gender equality. We would like to live in a company with gender equality. But what I do is, as our president of Google here in Europe is doing, he is a sportsman, and every morning he's doing a run or going in a fitness center, and then he goes under the shower with his colleagues, and then they are exchanging things. What are they talking about under the shower? Of course, about work things. You know, they make decisions there. And obviously, there is no women there under the shower with them. So, which means, you know, he doesn't give them access to this information, just based on that. So he's not doing that. So he wants, if you're talking to him, he said, yeah, gender equality is the thing I want to have. But he's not acting the way it is. It might be that he's just unconscious. But why is he unconscious? Because hidden commitments could be that he might think we are living in a man's world. And the underlying big assumption, which is often unconscious, might be that if I'm not playing the rules, I'll be not in power. If I'm not in power, I'll be not loved, I'll be not respected. If we're not going such deep, systemically, really honestly, into why are we doing the things we are doing, we will never see change. We can have rules, and I saw a lot of, you know, Google is a lot, they call it gender diversity, that's why I use this word, because Google is really, we have to do gender diversity, and we see that women are coming into positions who are not as qualified, they are unhappy, the men are unhappy, because they say, well, she's just there because of so there's an energy in that room, in that company, which is unhealthy for both, and that is not something we want to create. So I think if we are conscious about it, we can see like the blue fish a little bit, we can change course. Time's up. Okay, so there is a long-term study from the Max Planck Institute about loving-kindness meditation. You can train that. They understood that there is a difference between empathy and between compassion. You understand your blind spots, and by the way, better community, better social competence, joy in life, cooperations, inner balance, and stress reduction is happening while training these things. You can do that. And so it's all about raising our consciousness and unleash our transformational power. I think that is important, and doing that together is very, very, very powerful. And I would again stress Albert Einstein, and he said the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. But we have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Thank you very much.